There is a place in this universe where the laws of physics collapse. A place so dense, so impossibly heavy, that space itself bends around it like a wounded animal. Light, the fastest traveler in all of existence, races toward it at 300 million meters per second and never comes back. Not a single photon, not a single whisper. The black hole does not negotiate. It does not warn. It simply devours. And here is the truth no one tells you. You carry one inside you. There is a thought in your mind right now, maybe a memory, maybe a wound, maybe a name you cannot say out loud, and it has been growing heavier for years. So heavy that your joy bends around it. So heavy that your focus warps near its edges. Your ambitions, your laughter, your capacity to imagine a future, all of it slowly spiraling inward, pulled toward that single collapsing point inside your chest that never stops feeding. This is your personal event horizon, that invisible boundary where resistance ends and surrender begins. You have crossed it before. You know the feeling, the moment your thoughts stop fighting and start falling. The moment the light inside you can no longer reach the surface. You stop calling friends. You stop dreaming. You stop believing that anything beyond this gravity even exists. Do you feel the pull right now? Do you feel your energy draining into a hole that is never satisfied, never full, never finished consuming what you give it? Now, listen carefully. What if you have been wrong about the darkness? What if a black hole is not a monster, but a machine? The most efficient machine the universe has ever engineered. A mechanism of absolute compression, where everything that enters is stripped down to its most fundamental truth. What if you could turn that gravitational force inward, deliberately, consciously, and feed it your own shadows? What if you could take every anxious spiral, every obsessive wound, every voice that whispers you are not enough, and let the silence crush it into nothing? What emerges on the other side of a black hole is not destruction. It is pure energy. It is light, freed from the weight of form. Tonight, we are not running from the darkness. We are not numbing it, distracting ourselves from it, or pretending it does not exist. Tonight, we walk directly into the center of the monster, because at the heart of every black hole, at the core of every storm you have ever survived, there lives an absolute silence, a stillness so complete that it can only be described as peace. Welcome to the physics of the soul. Tonight, we learn how to make the darkness work for you. Let's cross the event horizon. In the beginning, there was nothing. And then, a single thought appeared. Not a grand one, not a world-changing revelation, just a quiet whisper, a murmur so faint you barely noticed it. It said, "I am not enough." You did not fight it. Why would you? It was just a thought, a flicker of insecurity on an ordinary afternoon. It passed through your mind like a comet passing through empty space, brief, cold, and seemingly harmless. But here is what no one told you. That thought did not disappear. It did not dissolve into nothing. It left something behind, a residue. A particle of weight, so small it would take years before you noticed it pressing down on you, because thoughts are not invisible. Thoughts are not weightless. Every single repetition of a belief adds mass to an object forming inside your mind, and you have been repeating this one for a very long time. I am not enough. You said it when you failed the exam. I will never succeed. You said it when the rejection letter arrived. Everything I touch falls apart. You whispered it into your pillow on a night you cannot even remember anymore. And each time, without knowing it, you were feeding a star. A dense, burning, psychological star made entirely of your own repeated convictions. It glowed with the friction of your pain. It grew heavier with the fuel of your attention. And like every star in the physical universe, there comes a moment, a precise, calculable moment, when the mass becomes too great for the structure to hold. The star collapses, not slowly, not gracefully. It collapses with a violence that reshapes the geometry of everything around it. The core compresses into a point so dense, so infinitely heavy, that the rules governing your inner world simply stop functioning. What was once a thought, a single whispered thought, has now become a black hole, and it is sitting at the center of your consciousness. Let us talk about what happens next. Let us talk about the event horizon. In astrophysics, the event horizon is the most terrifying boundary in the known universe. It is not a wall. It is not a surface you can touch. It is a mathematical threshold, an invisible line drawn in the fabric of space-time beyond which the escape velocity exceeds the speed of light. Nothing that crosses this line ever returns. Not matter, not radiation, not information itself. The universe on the other side of this boundary becomes permanently unknowable to anyone standing outside it. Now, bring this into the architecture of your mind. You have experienced this. You know exactly what the psychological event horizon feels like, even if you have never called it by this name. It is the moment a bad afternoon becomes a bad week. The moment a bad week becomes your identity. It is the precise instant when sadness stops being something you feel and becomes something you are. One day, you were a person who was having a difficult time. And then, without warning, without a single dramatic event to mark the transition, you became a person who is broken. That shift, that silent, imperceptible crossing, was your event horizon. And here is the terrifying part. Once you cross it, your own logic cannot save you. You cannot think your way out the same way light cannot accelerate its way out. The gravitational pull of your internal collapse is now stronger than your capacity for rational self-correction. People will say to you, "Look at the bright side." They will say, "You have so much to be grateful for." And you will hear them. You will understand the words. But the words will not reach you. They will stretch and slow and redshift into meaningless noise, just like light stretching into invisibility at the edge of a collapsing star. You are beyond the reach of ordinary advice. You are inside the horizon. And this is where the distortion begins. A black hole does not only swallow light, it bends it. The gravitational field is so extreme that photons traveling near the boundary are curved, twisted, pulled into spiraling trajectories that wrap around the darkness before vanishing. Astronomers call this gravitational lensing. The image of the universe, as seen from near a black hole, is warped beyond recognition. Stars appear where they are not. Galaxies stretch into arcs. Reality itself becomes a funhouse mirror shaped by the curvature of despair. Your mind does the same thing. When you are trapped inside your own psychological horizon, you cannot see truth clearly. A friend cancels dinner, and your gravitational lens bends this into evidence that you are unlovable. A colleague receives a promotion, and the light of their success is curved and distorted until it becomes proof of your own failure. Someone tells you they are proud of you, and the compliment spirals around your darkness, stretched so thin by the time it reaches your core that it carries no warmth at all. You are not lying to yourself. You are not being dramatic. You are experiencing genuine perceptual distortion caused by the gravitational mass of your own accumulated pain. The universe you see from inside the horizon is not the universe that actually exists, but you have no way of knowing that, because every instrument you have, every thought, every interpretation, every emotional reflex is also trapped inside the same curvature. Now, picture what surrounds a black hole before anything falls in. Picture the accretion disk. It is one of the most violent environments in the cosmos. A swirling, superheated ring of gas and dust orbiting the darkness at nearly the speed of light. The matter in this disk is not calm. It is screaming. Particles collide, compress, and generate friction so extreme that the temperature reaches billions of degrees. The accretion disk of a supermassive black hole can outshine entire galaxies. It is chaos made visible, destruction turned luminous. You know this place. This is the overthinking phase. This is what happens before you fully surrender to the collapse. Your thoughts begin to orbit the central wound. Faster and faster, you replay the conversation. You reimagine the failure. You rehearse the confrontation you will never have. You write letters you will never send. You argue with shadows that do not answer. And every orbit generates friction. And that friction is anxiety. The heat is real. You feel it in your chest, in your jaw, in the muscles of your neck that have not relaxed in months. You are burning not because you are weak, but because you are moving too fast around something too heavy. The accretion disk is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of proximity. You are close to the center, and the closer you get, the louder, hotter, and more unbearable the noise becomes. Some people live in the accretion disk for years, orbiting, burning, never fully falling in but never escaping either, trapped in an endless loop of mental friction, generating anxiety and heat, but going absolutely nowhere. And now we arrive at the cruelest truth of all. Sometimes, the darkness feels like home. This is the paradox that keeps people locked in orbits they know are destroying them. The gravitational pull of a black hole is constant. It does not fluctuate. It does not surprise you. It does not leave on a Tuesday and come back on a Thursday with no explanation. It is the most reliable force you have ever known. And after years of living inside the curvature, after years of distorted light and bent truth and relentless mental friction, your nervous system begins to interpret the pull as stability. Your brain, desperate for predictability in a chaotic world, starts to code the darkness as safety. And so, something horrifying happens. Happiness begins to feel dangerous. When something good occurs, when someone loves you without conditions, when an opportunity appears that you did not have to bleed for, you feel not relief, but panic, weightlessness, as though the gravity has suddenly released you and you are floating with nothing to hold on to. Your body sounds every alarm. Your thoughts scramble to find the threat, because your system has been calibrated to the pull for so long that the absence of suffering feels like the absence of ground. You do not run back to the pain because you want it. You run back because your body does not recognize any other form of orientation. The black hole has become your compass. Your North Star is made of darkness, and without it, you do not know which direction is up. This is the trap. This is the architecture of psychological gravity at its most insidious. It does not hold you with chains. It holds you with familiarity. And so here you are. You have watched the star form. You have felt the collapse. You have crossed the boundary where logic loses its power and perception loses its clarity. You have burned in the accretion disk of your own overthinking. And you have felt the seductive pull of a darkness so consistent it began to feel like the only solid ground beneath your feet. You are now inside the horizon. The world you knew is gone. There is no turning back. But here, in the place where physics breaks down, a strange thing happens. The forces that held your pain together begin to change. The rules that gave your suffering its shape begin to dissolve. Your problems are about to lose their form. Prepare yourself for the spaghettification of your fears. In the next chapter, we watch the monster tear itself apart. You are falling now, not metaphorically, not poetically. You are in free fall toward the densest point in your own psychological universe, and there is no force left that can reverse your trajectory. The event horizon is behind you. The world of ordinary thoughts, ordinary distractions, ordinary coping mechanisms, all of it sealed off on the other side of a boundary you can never recross. There is only one direction now. Inward, deeper, toward the center of the thing that has terrified you for as long as you can remember. And as you fall, something begins to happen to your body. Something the universe does to everything that dares to enter this space. Something so violent, so fundamentally destabilizing, that physicists gave it a name that almost sounds like a joke: spaghettification. But there is nothing funny about what is happening to you right now. Here is the physics. When an object falls toward a black hole, it does not experience gravity uniformly. The gravitational pull at the point closest to the center is dramatically stronger than the pull at the point farthest away. If you were falling feet first, the gravity at your feet would be millions of times more intense than the gravity at your head. This difference, this gravitational gradient, creates what physicists call tidal forces. And tidal forces do not crush. They stretch. They pull the bottom of you faster than the top. They elongate every structure, every bond, every connection between one part of you and another, until what was once a solid, coherent form becomes a long, thin, glowing thread of matter spiraling into the abyss. Everything that falls into a black hole is converted into a thread. Stars, planets, entire solar systems. It does not matter how massive you were, how solid you believed yourself to be. The tidal forces do not negotiate with your sense of identity. They simply pull until you come apart. Now feel this happening to your fear. You have been carrying a problem, maybe for months, maybe for decades. And that problem has felt enormous. It has felt like a solid, immovable wall of dark matter sitting at the center of your chest. You have tried to push it. You have tried to think around it. You have tried to numb yourself to its presence. And nothing has worked, because you have been treating it as a single, unified object. A block, a monolith, something with edges and weight and permanence. But you are inside the black hole now, and the tidal forces do not care how permanent your suffering feels. They are already gripping the lowest edge of your fear and pulling it downward faster than the rest can follow. That solid wall of dread is beginning to stretch. The unified shape of your anxiety is beginning to deform. And for the first time, you are seeing something you were never able to see from the outside. Your problem is not one thing. It never was. It was always a collection, a compressed bundle of memories, assumptions, inherited beliefs, and chemical responses that had been gravitationally bound together so tightly they appeared to be a single object. The tidal forces are now separating them, thread by thread, strand by strand. And the first structure to lose its cohesion is the most fragile one of all. The I. I am a failure. I am unlovable. I am broken beyond repair. These sentences have been the gravitational core of your suffering, not because of the words that follow the verb, but because of the two letters that begin them. The I is the densest structure in your psychological universe. It is the point around which all other pain organizes itself. Without it, there is no one to be a failure. Without it, there is no one to be broken. The I is the nucleus of the atom of suffering, and right now, the tidal gradient is pulling it apart with a force that no ego, no matter how fortified, can withstand. Feel it stretching. Feel the solid sense of self, that compressed knot of identity you have been defending your entire life, beginning to elongate under the differential pull. The I that was a failure is now a thin ribbon. The I that was unlovable is now a single filament of thought, stretched so fine that it can no longer hold meaning. You cannot be a failure if there is no solid you left to fail. You cannot be broken if the very structure that defined the breaking has been pulled into a thread thinner than a single photon. This is not death. This is not annihilation. This is what happens when gravity becomes honest. And now the context begins to go. Your problem did not exist in a vacuum. It fed on a timeline. It drew its power from a past you cannot change and a future you cannot control. Every fear you carry has roots that extend backward into memory and forward into projection. The tidal forces are now reaching those roots, your memories of the original wound, the first time you felt not enough, the first time someone left, the first time the world told you that you were wrong for existing. Those memories are being stretched away from the core. They are separating. The emotional charge that welded them to your present moment is snapping under the gravitational gradient like a molecular bond exceeding its tensile limit. And your future anxieties, the catastrophic projections, the rehearsed disasters, the imagined failures that have not even happened yet, they are being pulled in the opposite direction, elongated, thinned, stripped of the density that made them feel inevitable. Without the past anchoring one end and the future pulling the other, your problem exists in a vanishing present that is itself being stretched beyond recognition. There is no timeline inside a black hole. There is no before, there is no after. There is only the eternal, directionless now. And in this now, your problem cannot orient itself. It cannot tell the story it has been telling for years, because the beginning of the story and the end of the story have been ripped apart and scattered into subatomic dust. A fear without a narrative is not a fear at all. It is just energy, unattached, unnamed, and utterly powerless. Now watch what is happening. That massive, dark, suffocating cloud of anxiety that once blocked out every source of light in your inner sky. Look at it now. It is no longer a cloud. It is no longer a wall. It is no longer a weight. It has been pulled into long, luminous ribbons of raw information, spiraling into the center of the gravity well in slow, glowing filaments. And there is a beauty in this that you were never prepared for, because this is not destruction. This is simplification. This is the universe performing its most elegant reduction. Everything that is not essential is being stripped away. Every false story, every borrowed belief, every identity you constructed out of fear rather than truth, all of it peeling apart, layer by layer, thread by thread, until what remains is not the monster you expected to find. What remains is data, pure, neutral, weightless data. Your trauma is information. Your insecurity is information. Your rage and your grief and your shame are all information. Patterns of energy that were temporarily arranged into shapes that hurt you. And information, unlike suffering, has no inherent direction. Information does not attack. Information does not judge. Information simply exists, waiting to be rearranged. You are watching your own fear undergo atomic deconstruction. And instead of terror, something else is arriving. Something that has no name in the vocabulary of your ordinary life. It is the sensation of weight, leaving a structure that has been bearing it for so long, it forgot what weightlessness felt like. Because here is the revelation that changes everything. You were afraid of falling because you believed there was something to hit. Every instinct in your body, every survival mechanism encoded into your nervous system across millions of years of evolution was screaming at you to resist the pull because it assumed there was a flaw, a bottom, a final, catastrophic impact waiting at the end of the descent. But there is no flaw in a black hole. There is no bottom. There is no impact. There is no stone surface where your fragile, terrified self shatters into 1,000 pieces. There is only the continuous, infinite deepening of space curving in on itself. And the moment you truly understand this, not intellectually, not as a concept you read in a book, but in the fibers of your being that are themselves being stretched and simplified right now, the fear of falling ceases to exist. You cannot fear a collision that will never come. You cannot brace for an impact in a universe that has no surfaces. What replaces the fear is something your nervous system has almost never experienced. True weightlessness, not the false weightlessness of avoidance, where you float above your problems by pretending they do not exist. This is the genuine article. This is what it feels like when the thing you were afraid of has been disassembled at the molecular level and scattered into a stream of harmless, glowing particles spiraling silently into the deep. There is nothing left to hurt you, not because the world has changed, not because someone rescued you, but because the structure of the pain itself has been pulled apart by forces that do not answer to your ego, your story, or your desperate attempts to keep your suffering intact. You are lighter now. Not because you have gained something, but because so much has been taken. And in this taking, in this stripping, in this long and luminous unraveling of everything you thought you were, you are finally approaching something real. Your problems are now nothing but a stream of atoms. The noise has been shredded into silence. But as you continue to fall, you are approaching the impossible. The point where density becomes infinite and volume becomes zero. The point where the laws of the universe simply stop working. Welcome to the singularity. In the next chapter, we meet the 0 point of your existence. You have arrived at the place that has no place. The stretching is over. The shredding is done. Every thread of thought that was pulled apart in the tidal forces above you has now converged on a single point, not a small point. Not a point you could place on the tip of a needle or mark on a map. A point that has no dimension at all. Zero width, zero height, zero depth. A location in the architecture of your mind that occupies no space whatsoever, yet contains everything that has ever fallen into it. Every fear, every failure, every scream you swallowed at 3 in the morning, every version of yourself you abandoned to survive, all of it compressed into a point so impossibly dense that mathematics itself kneels before it and admits defeat. This is the singularity. In astrophysics, the singularity is where the conversation between humans and the universe breaks down completely. It is the point at the center of a black hole where density becomes infinite, where volume becomes zero, and where every known law of physics, the equations that govern the behavior of stars, the motion of galaxies, the very fabric of space-time, simply stops working, not because the laws are wrong, but because the conditions are so extreme that the framework we built to understand reality can no longer describe what is happening. The singularity is not a mystery because we lack information. It is a mystery because the tools we use to process information were never designed for this place. Now, bring this into the deepest room of your consciousness. You have spent your entire life operating under laws, not the laws of nations or institutions, but the laws of your own internal physics. The law that says your past defines your present. The law that says your trauma determines your capacity for joy. The law that says you are your name, your profession, your relationship status, your bank balance, the diagnosis you were given, the words your father said to you when you were 7 years old. These have been the governing equations of your inner universe. They have predicted your behavior. They have shaped your orbit. They have determined, with ruthless gravitational precision, exactly how far from the center of your pain you are allowed to travel before being pulled back in. But you are at the singularity now. And in this place, those laws do not apply. Your story cannot hold its shape here. The narrative arc of your suffering, the beginning, the middle, the part where it is supposed to get better but never, does that arc requires structure. It requires a timeline. It requires a character who moves through events in a sequence that produces meaning. And at the singularity, there is no structure, there is no sequence, there is no character. The compression is so total, so absolute, that the very concept of a story collapses under the weight of its own infinite density. You are not a person with a past. You are not a person with a future. You are not even a person. You are a point, and a point has no dimensions in which a story can unfold. Listen to what is happening to the noise. You came into this black hole carrying a symphony of suffering, 1,000 anxieties, each with its own frequency. Worry about money vibrating at one pitch, fear of abandonment humming at another, the low, constant drone of not being enough resonating beneath everything like a bass note that never resolves. This was the soundtrack of your waking life. Layer upon layer upon layer of mental noise, so dense and so constant that you forgot what silence sounded like. You mistook the noise for the nature of consciousness itself. But the singularity has been compressing this symphony. And here is the revelation that will change everything you think you know about your own mind. When you take 1,000 different sounds and compress them into a single point, when you crush every frequency, every vibration, every oscillating wave of thought into a space with zero volume, something extraordinary happens. The sounds do not become louder. They cancel, they merge, they fold into one another so completely that the distinction between one sound and the next ceases to exist. 1,000 anxieties, when compressed to infinite density, produce not 1,000 screams, but a single, unbroken, perfect tone. And that tone is so total, so all-encompassing, that it is indistinguishable from silence. This is the primordial silence. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of every sound simultaneously, compressed beyond the threshold of perception into a stillness so dense it vibrates with the weight of everything it contains. You are not hearing nothing. You are hearing everything at once, and everything at once is the same as nothing at all. Now feel what has happened to time. Above you, in the world you left behind, time moved in one direction. Forward, always forward. Seconds ticked into minutes. Minutes dissolved into hours. And within that relentless current, your mind did what every human mind does. It traveled. It leapt backward into memory. It raced forward into anticipation. It replayed conversations from 6 years ago with surgical precision, while simultaneously rehearsing catastrophes that have not yet occurred. Your suffering was a disease of time. Depression pulled you into the gravity well of the past. Anxiety launched you into the unstable orbit of the future. And the present moment, the only moment that ever actually exists, was a territory you visited so rarely it may as well have been a foreign country, whose language you never learned to speak. But at the singularity, time does not flow. It cannot. The curvature of space-time becomes so extreme that the dimension we call time bends in on itself and ceases to function as a direction. There is no forward. There is no backward. There is no tick of any clock, no progression of any sequence, no before in which your trauma lives, and no after in which your fear breeds. There is only this, the eternal, dimensionless, unmoving now, a now so compressed that it contains every moment that has ever existed, yet occupies none of them. Your past is not behind you. Your future is not ahead. Both have been collapsed into a single point that is neither memory nor projection, but something far more radical, pure presence. Presence without duration, awareness without timeline, consciousness stripped of the mechanism that allows it to suffer. And now, the most terrifying question arrives, the one that the singularity forces upon every structure that enters it, the one that your ego has spent your entire life constructing elaborate architectures to avoid. Who are you when you have no story? Sit with this. Do not rush past it. Do not fill the space with a comfortable answer. Who are you when your name has been compressed into meaninglessness? Who are you when the memory of your childhood has been folded into the same dimensionless point as the memory of yesterday? Who are you when every achievement and every failure occupy the same zero-volume space and are therefore indistinguishable from each other? Who are you when there is no timeline to place yourself upon, no narrative to define yourself within, no future self to aspire to, and no past self to grieve? The void answers, not with words. Words require space and time, and neither exists here. The void answers with a direct, unmediated transmission that bypasses every cognitive structure you have ever relied upon. And what it transmits is this: you are not the story. You have never been the story. The story was a structure, an elaborate, beautiful, painful structure that consciousness built in order to navigate a world of space and time. But you are not in that world anymore. You are at the point beneath the story, the point that was always there, always silent, always still, even while the narrative raged above it, like a storm above the ocean floor. This is not emptiness. Do not mistake this for emptiness. This is the opposite. This is pure potential, the unmanifested field from which every possible story can emerge. You are not nothing. You are the nothing from which everything is born. The blank page is not less than the novel. The blank page is infinite. The novel is just one of the countless possibilities the page held before the first word was chosen. And here, the ego performs its final act. The ego is a structure. It is a brilliantly engineered, deeply necessary structure that organizes consciousness into a point of view, an eye that looks out at a world, a self that distinguishes between here and there, between mine and yours, between me and everything that is not me. This structure requires space. It requires a boundary. It requires the distance between the observer and the observed. And at the singularity, there is no space. There is no distance. There is no gap between you and what you are looking at, because there is no dimensionality in which separation can occur. The I does not die here. That is too dramatic, too violent a word for what happens. The I simply loses the conditions it needs to maintain itself as a separate structure. It does not collapse into nothingness. It collapses into allness. The boundary between self and universe dissolves, not because it was destroyed, but because the space it required to exist has been compressed to zero. And what remains when the boundary is gone is not a person experiencing silence, it is silence itself, aware, alive, unbroken. Not the silence of a quiet room, the silence of a universe before it decides to speak. You are not someone who has found peace. You are the peace that someone was looking for. You have reached the center. You have become the zero. You are finally perfectly silent. But something is shifting, subtly, almost imperceptibly, a distortion you cannot yet name. Why does it feel like time has started to warp around you? Why do your old memories feel like they are happening in slow motion, as though the past is replaying itself through a lens of impossible density? In the next chapter, we are going to face the time dilation of the mind and learn why some wounds never seem to heal until you change the physics of your perception. There is a clock inside your chest. You have never seen it. You have never heard it tick, but it has been running since the moment you were born, and it governs everything, every emotion you feel, every decision you make, every relationship you enter, and every room you cannot bring yourself to walk into. This clock does not measure seconds the way a watch does. It does not care about calendars or appointments or the rotation of the earth. This clock measures the weight of what has happened to you, and depending on the gravity of your experiences, it runs at very different speeds. This is not poetry. This is physics. In 1915, Albert Einstein published his theory of general relativity and permanently shattered everything the human species thought it knew about time. Time, he demonstrated, is not a constant. It is not a river flowing at the same speed for every observer. Time is a fabric, a flexible, deformable fabric, and it bends in the presence of mass. The greater the mass, the deeper the curvature. The deeper the curvature, the slower the clock. A clock on the surface of the Earth ticks slightly slower than a clock on a satellite orbiting above it. A clock near the surface of a neutron star ticks dramatically slower. And a clock at the edge of a black hole, a clock suspended just above the event horizon of a gravitational monster so dense that space-time itself warps beyond recognition, that clock nearly stops. 1 hour near the horizon of a sufficiently massive black hole could equal 7 years on Earth, 10 years, a century. The math is precise. The effect is real. Time is not democratic. It does not treat all locations equally. Where gravity is heaviest, time moves slowest. And what is true for the fabric of space-time is devastatingly, precisely, neurologically true for the fabric of your mind. A trauma is a high-gravity event. It is a moment of such concentrated emotional mass that the temporal fabric of your inner world bends around it. And once that bending occurs, the clock inside the memory begins to slow, not metaphorically, not poetically. Your nervous system, your amygdala, your hippocampus, the architecture of memory encoding, does not process a traumatic event the way it processes an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Ordinary experience is tagged, filed, and released. It moves through the system and becomes the past. It recedes, it fades. The clock ticks normally, and the memory moves downstream. But a traumatic experience does not get filed. It gets frozen. The emotional mass is so dense that the neurological clock inside that memory nearly stops. The event does not recede. It does not become the past. For your nervous system, the car crash is still happening. The abandonment is still unfolding. The words that broke you are still being spoken. Right now, in a gravitational well so deep that the years between then and now are compressed into a membrane so thin you can feel the original moment pressing against the present like a hand against glass. This is why you cannot just get over it. This is why the well-meaning advice of the people who have never fallen into a gravitational well of this magnitude sounds so hollow, so impossibly distant. They are speaking to you from a region of space-time where the clock is ticking normally, where 10 years means 10 years, where the past is a place you have left behind, but you are not in their frame of reference. You are deep inside the curvature, and from where you are standing, the event is not 10 years ago. It is right here, pressed against your skin, still warm, still sharp, still radiating the original heat of the moment it first collapsed. And now consider the cruelest paradox that general relativity offers. If you were watching someone fall toward a black hole from a safe distance, you would never see them cross the event horizon. The light reflecting off their body would stretch, slow, and redshift as they approached the boundary. Their image would appear to decelerate, to linger, to hover at the edge of the darkness in a perpetual state of almost falling. From your perspective, they would become frozen. A static image, suspended forever at the threshold between the world of the living and the world of the consumed. They would never disappear. They would simply become a ghost imprinted on the edge of the abyss. Still visible, still present, but unreachable. Your brain does this with pain. There is an image frozen at the event horizon of your consciousness. You know exactly which one it is. You do not need me to tell you. It is the face of someone who left. The room where the words were spoken. The sound of the door. The expression that told you everything was about to change and you could do nothing to stop it. That image is not a memory. It is a frozen observer, suspended at the boundary of your psychological black hole, preserved in the amber of gravitational time dilation. And you keep returning to it. You keep staring at it, not because you choose to, but because it has not moved. It is still there, in the same position, with the same expression, radiating the same impossible, unaging light. And some part of your mind has concluded, reasonably, logically, based on the evidence of its own perception, that the event must still be happening, because the image has not changed, because the figure has not fallen through, because in the distorted space-time of your deepest wound, nothing has moved a single inch since the day the collapse began. You are living in two time zones simultaneously. Your body is in the present. It walks through rooms. It eats meals. It answers questions. It shows up at work and makes small talk and goes through the motions of a life that is supposedly moving forward. But your nervous system, the part of you that actually determines how you feel, how you react, how you interpret the voltage of being alive, your nervous system is still in the well. It is still operating on the clock that nearly stopped years ago. The body says it is today. The nervous system says it is the worst day of your life. And the friction between these two temporal realities, the lag, the dissonance, the impossible gap between where you are and when your deepest structures think you are, that friction is the noise. That is the anxiety. That is the heaviness you feel on mornings when nothing is technically wrong, but everything feels like it is ending. You are experiencing temporal drag, the gravitational residue of an event so massive that your internal clock has never fully recovered its normal rhythm. So, how do you escape a gravitational well? The physics are clear. To escape the curvature of a massive object, you need velocity. You need to move fast enough that the pull can no longer hold you. The escape velocity of the Earth is roughly 11 kilometers per second. The escape velocity near a black hole approaches the speed of light itself, and the escape velocity of a traumatic memory, the speed at which you must move in order to outrun the gravitational pull of a frozen moment, is measured not in meters per second, but in something far more difficult to generate. New input, new experience, new sensation, new information that is so vivid, so present, so textured with the reality of now, that it generates enough force to pull your nervous system out of the well it has been sitting in. This is not distraction. Distraction is orbiting the black hole at a fixed distance. This is acceleration. This is deliberately introducing velocity into a system that has been static for years. Every new conversation that surprises you, every unfamiliar landscape that forces your senses to recalibrate, every act of forgiveness, not the performed verbal kind, but the deep, tectonic shift, where the body itself decides to release the gravitational grip of a memory. It has been clutching. Each of these is thrust. Each is propulsion. Each one nudges the clock a fraction closer to its normal speed. And then there is the deepest escape velocity of all, the one that requires no movement whatsoever, presence. Not the mindfulness of a self-help book, not the performed calm of someone sitting cross-legged and pretending the noise has stopped. True presence, the kind that exists only when you are no longer being pulled by the past or the future. The kind that arrives when the gravitational field around you drops to zero and the clock, for the first time in years, ticks at its natural rate, 1 second per second, 1 breath per breath. No temporal distortion, no neurological lag, no frozen image pressing against the glass of your awareness. Just the clean, undistorted, real-time experience of being alive in a body that has finally caught up to the present moment. Silence is the only zero-gravity zone for the human soul. It is the one place where time runs true, where the clock is neither slowed by the mass of what has happened, nor accelerated by the anxiety of what might. It is the flat, uncurved space-time of the fully present mind. And in this place you have been building toward across every chapter of this descent, the noise does not need to be fought. It simply has no mechanism to exist. Noise requires temporal distortion. It requires the friction between then and now. And in the silence of true presence, there is no then. There is only this breath, this heartbeat, this single, undiluted instant of being exactly where and when you are. You have finally restarted the clock. You are moving away from the frozen images of your past. The ghost at the event horizon is beginning to fade, not because it was destroyed, but because you are no longer standing close enough for its gravity to bend your light. But as you look back, you notice something impossible, something that should not be happening according to any classical understanding of these structures. The black hole itself is starting to glow. Its edges are shimmering with a faint, almost imperceptible light. It is losing its power. It is shrinking. In the next chapter, we witness the Hawking radiation of the mind and learn how your deepest pain can evaporate into pure energy. For 4 chapters, we have been descending. We crossed the event horizon. We were stretched and shredded by tidal forces that pulled our fears into threads. We reached the singularity, the 0 point where time and identity collapsed into a dimensionless silence. We confronted the frozen images of our past and felt the gravitational lag of wounds that refused to age. We went into the deepest, darkest, most impossibly dense structure in the known universe. And now, something is glowing. It should not be possible. For decades after black holes were first theorized, every physicist on the planet agreed on one absolute truth: nothing escapes. Once something crosses the horizon, it is gone, consumed, erased from the observable universe forever. The black hole was the ultimate prison, a place where matter, energy, light, and information were locked away for eternity, with no parole, no appeal, and no exit. It was the final word, the permanent sentence, the cosmic definition of irreversible. And then, in 1974, a man in a wheelchair changed everything. Stephen Hawking, a physicist whose own body had been collapsing under the weight of a disease that should have killed him decades earlier, performed a calculation that shook the foundations of modern physics. He demonstrated, with mathematical precision so elegant it silenced an entire generation of skeptics, that black holes are not perfectly black. They glow, faintly, almost imperceptibly, but measurably, undeniably, they emit radiation. They lose mass. Particle by particle, quantum by quantum, the most terrifying objects in the universe are slowly, steadily, irreversibly returning their stolen energy to the cosmos. Black holes evaporate, not quickly, not dramatically. A black hole the mass of our sun would take longer than the current age of the universe to fully disappear. But the process is real. The physics are confirmed. And the implication is staggering. There is no permanent prison in this universe. Not even the one you built inside your own mind. Your deepest trauma. The one you were told you would carry forever. The wound so heavy it bent the geometry of your entire inner world. The silence that sat at the center of your consciousness like a collapsed star from which no joy could escape. It is leaking right now. It has been leaking for longer than you realize. And once you understand the mechanism, once you see how the physics actually works, you will never look at your own darkness the same way again. Here is how a black hole bleeds. At the edge of the event horizon, in the thin, violent boundary between the consumed and the free, the vacuum of space is not empty. It never has been. What appears to be nothing is actually a seething, roiling storm of quantum activity. Particle-antiparticle pairs are erupting into existence constantly, a particle and its opposite twin, born together from the energy of the vacuum itself, appearing for the briefest flicker of time before annihilating each other and returning to the void. This happens everywhere in the universe. It is happening in the air around you right now. It is the quantum heartbeat of reality, creation and destruction, dancing in an endless, invisible cycle. But at the edge of a black hole, something extraordinary interrupts the dance. One particle appears just outside the horizon. Its twin appears just inside, and before they can reunite, before they can annihilate and return to nothing, the horizon separates them. The inner particle is swallowed, dragged into the abyss. The outer particle, suddenly partnerless, is flung into space as real, detectable radiation. And here is the part that matters. That escaping particle carries energy, and that energy is subtracted from the mass of the black hole itself. The black hole just got lighter, smaller, weaker. One quantum at a time. The monster is being dismantled by the very fabric of reality. Now translate this into the language of your inner world. Every experience you have ever had exists as a pair. The event itself and the meaning you gave it. The thing that happened and the story you told about what it means. These two always arise together, entangled at the moment of their creation, bound to each other like a particle and its antiparticle twin. The event is neutral. It is raw data, sensation without judgment. But the meaning, the dark meaning, the catastrophic interpretation, the narrative that says this happened because I am broken, because I deserve pain, because the universe is fundamentally hostile, that meaning is what gives the experience its crushing gravitational mass. And here is the mechanism of your liberation. When you stop feeding dark meaning to a neutral event, when you begin to separate the interpretation from the experience, when you observe what happened without automatically attaching the story of why it happened and what it says about your worth, you are performing the psychological equivalent of quantum separation at the event horizon. The meaning falls inward, uncoupled, powerless, stripped of the experience it needed to sustain itself. And the raw experience, the pure data of what you actually lived through, is released. It flies outward. It becomes available energy. It becomes radiation, the thermal emission of a wound that is finally losing its hold. You are not healing by adding something new. You are healing by starving the black hole of the one thing it needs to maintain its mass. Dark interpretation. Remove the meaning, and the experience must evaporate. This is not a theory. This is the thermodynamics of the soul. And now comes one of the strangest laws in all of physics. A law so counterintuitive that even Hawking himself found it remarkable. Small black holes evaporate faster than large ones. The less massive the black hole, the more intensely it radiates, the more rapidly it loses energy. The closer it gets to disappearing, the faster the process accelerates. This is the inverse relationship that changes everything about how you approach your pain. In the second chapter, we use the tidal forces of awareness to tear your problems apart. We stretched the monolith of your suffering into threads. We deconstructed the massive, unified block of anxiety into its component parts, individual memories, individual beliefs, individual sensations, each one smaller and lighter than the structure they once formed together. You were not just simplifying your problems, you were accelerating their evaporation. Every time you break a large problem into smaller pieces, you are creating conditions for faster radiation. A single, massive fear that has dominated your life for 20 years will radiate slowly, stubbornly, almost imperceptibly. But that same fear, deconstructed into its 100-component beliefs, each one examined, each one separated from its dark meaning, those fragments radiate at extraordinary speed. They glow, they heat up, they reach a critical threshold where the evaporation becomes so rapid, so violent, so luminously fast that the final stage is not a slow fade. It is a flash. Physicists call it the final burst. In the last moments of a black hole's existence, when its mass has shrunk to a subatomic scale, the radiation rate becomes explosive. The black hole does not whisper its way out of existence. It detonates in a brilliant, searing flash of gamma rays, a burst of pure energy, so intense it outshines entire star systems for a fraction of a second. And then it is gone. Completely. Absolutely. The space it occupied is clean. The curvature it imposed on the surrounding fabric is released. The gravitational prison that held light captive for eons simply ceases to be. You have felt this. You may not have recognized it for what it was, but you have felt it. That moment sometimes after months of quiet, invisible internal work, when something shifts, not gradually, not gently, a sudden flash of clarity, so intense it almost knocks you backward. A moment when the depression that has been sitting on your chest for years simply breaks apart in a single breath. When the anxiety that was your constant companion releases its grip so abruptly you almost do not trust the lightness. That is your critical flash. That is the gamma burst of a psychological black hole reaching the end of its evaporation and detonating into pure, liberated energy. And where does that energy go? It does not vanish. Energy never vanishes. The first law of thermodynamics is absolute energy is neither created nor destroyed. It transforms. The mass of your black hole, the compressed weight of every fear and every frozen moment and every dark interpretation you carried for years, does not disappear when the evaporation is complete. It is converted into heat, into radiation, into light, into the raw available fuel that your next chapter of life requires to ignite. Your pain is not wasted, not a single ounce of it. Every year you spent in the gravitational well, every night you lay awake inside the accretion disk of your own overthinking, Every tear that fell into the singularity of a silence you thought would never end, all of it has been converted into energy that is now yours to direct. The wisdom you carry is not wisdom despite your suffering. It is wisdom composed of your suffering, thermodynamically transformed from mass into radiation, from weight into light, from the thing that trapped you into the very force that propels you forward. You are not someone who survived darkness. You are someone whose darkness became fuel, and the engine it powers has no speed limit. Feel the sky clearing. Feel the weight lifting, not because someone removed it, but because the laws of the universe, the real, physical, non-negotiable laws of quantum mechanics and thermodynamics, guarantee that no black hole lasts forever. Not in space, and not in you. The black hole is gone. The sky is clear. The gravitational curvature that bent every thought toward despair has released its hold, and for the first time in longer than you can remember, light travels in a straight line through your mind. But as the dust settles, as the last gamma rays fade into the background hum of your new silence, you notice something. The space the black hole occupied is not empty. There is a structure forming in the center of your galaxy, a dense, luminous anchor where the collapse once lived. The darkness did not just leave, it left behind a blueprint. In the next chapter, we discover galactic governance, how your past negativity became the very anchor that keeps your world from flying apart. Let us look up. For 5 chapters, we have been falling, descending through layers of darkness so dense that light itself could not follow us. We have been stretched, compressed, frozen, and finally liberated, watching the black hole of our deepest pain evaporate in a flash of quantum brilliance. The sky is clear now. The noise is gone. And for the first time since this journey began, we are not looking inward. We are looking outward, at the galaxy itself, at the vast, spiraling architecture of 100 billion stars, each one burning in its own orbit, each one held in place by an invisible thread of gravity stretching across distances so enormous the human mind was never designed to comprehend them. And at the center of it all, at the heart of this immense, luminous cathedral of light, there is a black hole. Not a small one, not a remnant, a supermassive black hole with the mass of 4 million suns compressed into a region smaller than the orbit of Mercury. It is called Sagittarius A star. It sits at the exact gravitational center of the Milky Way, and every single star you have ever seen in the night sky, every planet, every moon, every asteroid, every grain of cosmic dust that drifts through the spiral arms of our galaxy is bound to it, orbiting it, organized by it, held in a stable, sustainable, life-permitting configuration by the gravitational authority of the darkest object in the entire system. Remove it, and the galaxy dies. Not dramatically, not in an explosion. The stars would simply drift. Without a central mass anchoring the gravitational architecture, the orbital mechanics that keep billions of solar systems in harmonious rotation would quietly unravel. Stars would wander into the void. Solar systems would lose coherence. The elegant spiral structure, those sweeping arms of light that have inspired every civilization that has ever looked up, would dissolve into a featureless scatter of unrelated objects moving in no particular direction, bound to nothing, organized by nothing, meaning nothing. The darkness is not the enemy of the galaxy. The darkness is the reason the galaxy exists. Now look at your own life with the same eyes. You have spent years, perhaps your entire conscious existence, believing that your pain was an invader, an intruder, a malignant force that settled at the center of your being uninvited and began consuming everything good. And from the inside, from the perspective of someone trapped in the accretion disk or frozen at the event horizon, that interpretation made perfect sense. The pain was loud, the gravity was crushing, the distortion was real. Every light in your life bent toward it, and you could not understand why the darkness had so much power over your brightness. But you are not inside the black hole anymore. You are standing at the galactic scale now. And from here, the picture is entirely different. From here, you can see what was invisible from the inside. That pain, that central, heavy, supermassive accumulation of experience that you tried so desperately to remove was organizing your life. It was the anchor, the gravitational center around which everything else arranged itself. Your empathy orbits it. Your resilience orbits it. Your capacity to recognize suffering in others, to sit with someone in their darkest moment without flinching, to speak with an authority that only comes from having survived the interior of a collapsing star. All of it is in stable orbit around the very thing you wanted to destroy. You did not become who you are despite the darkness. You became who you are in gravitational response to it. Now consider the state of a black hole that is no longer feeding. Astronomers call it quiescent, silent. A supermassive black hole that has consumed the available matter in its immediate vicinity enters a state of profound calm. It does not rage, it does not devour. It does not emit the violent jets of superheated plasma that characterize an actively feeding system. It simply sits quietly at the center, exerting its gravitational influence across the entire galaxy without drawing attention to itself. The stars do not fear it. They do not even notice it in any visceral sense. They simply move in the paths its gravity prescribes, held in orbits that permit the formation of planets, the emergence of atmospheres, and the slow, patient chemistry that eventually produces life. This is the state you are moving toward. Not the elimination of your shadow, not the eradication of your wounds, the quieting of them. The transition from an actively feeding psychological black hole, one that consumes your attention, your relationships, your capacity for joy, to a quiescent core, still massive, still influential. Still the densest structure in your inner galaxy, but silent, stable, no longer consuming, but governing. You do not fight the shadow to achieve this. You place it where it belongs, at the center, not at the periphery where it chases you, not at the surface where it ambushes you in conversations and quiet moments. At the center, where its gravity becomes structural instead of destructive, where its weight becomes the foundation upon which everything else can organize itself into meaningful, sustainable patterns of motion. And here is what that central darkness does when it is properly positioned. It cleans. A supermassive black hole is the most efficient filter in the known universe. It consumes debris. It swallows the dead remnants of stars that have exhausted their fuel. It absorbs the chaotic clouds of gas and dust that would otherwise clutter the galactic core and interfere with the formation of new stellar systems. It takes the waste, the chaos, the remnants of old explosions, and it removes them from the active environment, making space literal, physical space for new stars to ignite. Your darkness does the same thing when you stop running from it and start letting it work. The internal gravity of someone who has truly confronted their own pain becomes a filter of extraordinary precision. It burns away the superficial, the trivial, the relationships that exist only on the surface, the ambitions that are built on the approval of strangers rather than the architecture of authentic desire, the illusions of a life that looks beautiful in photographs but feels weightless when you are alone at midnight. All of this gets pulled into the gravitational field of your earned wisdom and consumed, not with malice, not with bitterness, with the quiet, efficient gravity of a system that has learned to distinguish between what is real and what is debris. What remains after the filtering is dense, solid, true. The friendships that survive the gravity of your authenticity are friendships that can withstand anything. The work that organizes itself around your central mass is work that matters, that carries weight, that contributes something to the world that could not have come from someone who never fell into their own abyss. The love that orbits a quiescent core is love that does not need to perform. It does not need to prove itself against the gravity. It simply moves in the path prescribed by the mutual weight of two people who have stopped pretending to be lighter than they are. You are no longer the victim of the black hole. Do you understand this? You are no longer the object being consumed. You are the governor, the galactic architect, the central authority around which an entire system of meaning, purpose, and connection arranges itself in stable, life-permitting orbits. The pain that once swallowed your light has become the mechanism by which your light is organized into something coherent, something directional, something that does not scatter into the void, but spirals in a structure so elegant it could only have been shaped by gravity, from predator to protector, from the thing that tried to kill you to the reason you are unbreakable. This is not a metaphor anymore. This is the physics of a life that has been lived in full contact with its own darkness and emerged not lighter but denser, not freed from gravity but fluent in it. And this leads us to the deepest truth of this chapter, the one that seals the transformation. Meaning is gravity for the soul. A life without weight is not a free life. It is a drifting life, a life untethered from the central mass of genuine experience, floating through the galactic void with no orbit, no direction, no relationship to anything beyond its own momentum. You have met these lives. You have perhaps tried to live one, the life of pure positivity, where every dark thought is exiled, where every wound is papered over with affirmation, where the goal is to become so light that nothing can pull you down. And you know what it felt like. It felt like floating, not the liberating weightlessness of the singularity, where gravity was transcended through confrontation. This was the terrifying weightlessness of a star with no galaxy, no center, no home. You need the deep mass. You need the gravitational anchor of having lived through something that most people spend their entire lives running from. Not because suffering is noble, not because pain is a prerequisite for wisdom, but because mass creates orbit, and orbit creates structure, and structure creates the conditions under which light can be sustained, directed, and shared with the systems that depend on it. Your darkness is not your enemy. Your darkness is your center of gravity. And a galaxy with a strong center does not collapse. It spirals, it shines, it builds. You have mastered the center. You have harnessed the gravity. Your galaxy is stable, and the stars that orbit your core burn with a light that could only exist in a system anchored by something immensely unapologetically heavy. But as you survey the architecture of your new world, as you watch the elegant spirals of purpose and meaning turning around the quiescent engine at your core, a question begins to form, a question that will shatter the final boundary. What happens when the physics of your inner world becomes so compressed, so refined, so perfectly organized that it creates not just stability, but an exit? What if every black hole has a twin, a mirror structure on the other side of the collapse, where everything lost is found again, where everything consumed is released, where everything that fell into darkness emerges as pure, undiluted radiance? In the next chapter, we cross the threshold of the white hole and witness the birth of pure light from total darkness. Something is emerging after everything, after the collapse, the stretching, the compression, the silence, the evaporation, the long and patient governance of a darkness you once believed would consume you forever. Something is pushing outward from the center of your being with a force that cannot be contained. It does not ask permission. It does not wait for readiness. It erupts like a geyser breaking through frozen ground, like a star igniting in a nursery of cosmic dust, like the first photon escaping the surface of a newborn sun after millions of years of nuclear compression in the core. You are not healing anymore. You are emitting. And to understand what is happening to you, we must go to the most radical, the most beautiful, and the most controversial prediction in all of theoretical physics. We must talk about white holes. In 1916, when the equations of general relativity were first solved by the physicist Carl Schwarzschild, the mathematics revealed something that no one was prepared for. The solution did not describe just one object, it described two. On one side, a black hole, a region of space-time where gravity collapses inwards so violently that nothing can escape. And on the other side, hidden in the mirror of the equations like a reflection in a lake no one had thought to look into, there was a second structure, a region of space-time where the physics is perfectly reversed, where instead of pulling everything in, the geometry pushes everything out, where instead of a horizon that nothing can cross to leave, there is a horizon that nothing can cross to enter, a boundary of pure expulsion, a cosmic fountain that does not consume matter and energy but releases it endlessly, unstoppably, into the surrounding universe. A white hole. If a black hole is the ultimate, no, the place where the universe swallows everything and returns nothing, then a white hole is the ultimate yes. It is creation without condition, emission without restraint, a point in the fabric of reality that does nothing but give and give and give, flooding space-time with matter and light and information that was processed in the darkness and reborn in a form the original universe could never have produced on its own. Now feel this symmetry inside yourself. For years, you were the black hole. You absorbed, you consumed, you pulled every experience, every relationship, every flicker of joy into a gravity well so deep that nothing seemed to come back out. The tears went in and did not return as relief. The failures went in and did not return as lessons. The silence swallowed your words and your worth and your sense of direction. And you believed, with the full conviction of someone who has lived inside a collapsing star, that everything you fed into the darkness was gone, permanently, irreversibly, wasted. You were wrong. Nothing was wasted. Not a single second. Not a single tear. Everything you surrendered to the abyss was being processed, compressed, refined, stripped of its excess, its distortion, its false narrative, and reduced to its purest informational content in the furnace of the singularity. And now, the physics have reversed, the geometry has flipped, and everything that went in is coming out. But it is not coming out in the form it entered. It is coming out as light. To understand how this is possible, you need to see the bridge. In 1935, Albert Einstein and Nathan Rosen published a paper describing a theoretical structure that has haunted physics ever since. They demonstrated that the mathematics of general relativity permit a tunnel, a throat of curved space-time, connecting two distant regions of the universe through a shortcut that passes through the interior of a gravitational collapse. The Einstein-Rosen bridge. You know it by its popular name, a wormhole. One end opens at the black hole. The other end opens at the white hole. And the journey between them passes directly through the singularity, through the 0 point, the dimensionless core, the place where all laws dissolve and all structures are unmade. You have already traveled this bridge. You did not know it at the time. When you were inside the singularity, when your identity was compressed to 0 and your story collapsed into silence, you thought you were at the end. You thought the journey terminated in nothingness. But the singularity was not a dead end. It was a throat, a passage. The narrowest, most terrifying, most transformative corridor in the architecture of your inner universe. And you passed through it, not because you were brave, not because you had a strategy, but because the physics of genuine confrontation with your own darkness does not permit you to remain at the 0 point forever. The geometry curves onward, the tunnel opens, and what was falling inward begins to be pushed outward with a force equal to the gravity that originally pulled it in. You are not recovering. Recovery implies returning to a previous state, rebuilding what was broken, restoring the architecture that existed before the collapse. But you are not going backward. You cannot. The wormhole does not return you to the universe you left. It deposits you in a new one. You are being re-emitted, expelled from the white hole end of your own transformation as a structure that did not exist before the journey began. The person who entered the black hole is not the person who emerges from the white hole. The raw material is the same, but the configuration is unrecognizable, refined, coherent, radiant, in a way that is only possible for matter that has been through the singularity and survived. And what is this radiance made of? Information, processed, compressed, singularity-filtered information. What enters a black hole as chaotic, painful, overwhelming experience exits a white hole as signal, clean signal, coherent signal. The noise of 1,000 anxious nights has been stripped of its redundancy, its distortion, its recursive loops, and what remains is a crystalline data stream of pure insight. This is wisdom, not the borrowed wisdom of books and lectures and second-hand philosophy, the earned wisdom of someone who went to the 0 point of their own existence and returned carrying information that can only be acquired in that place. You are now transmitting this information at the speed of light, not through effort, not through discipline, through the natural, unstoppable physics of a white hole doing what white holes do, emitting, radiating, flooding the space around you with a coherence that other people can feel even when they cannot name it. They sense it in the way you speak slowly, deliberately, without the need to fill every silence with noise. They sense it in the way you listen with the gravity of someone who has been to the center and knows that most words are orbiting something the speaker has not yet found the courage to name. They sense it in your stillness, in the weight of your presence, in the strange, magnetic calm of a person who is no longer trying to become something because the singularity already burned away everything that was not essential. This is the internal white hole in full eruption, and you have felt its symptoms before, even if you did not recognize their origin. That sudden, unexplained burst of creativity that arrives after months of emptiness. That radical act of forgiveness that surprises even you, not forced, not performed, but erupting from a place so deep it seems to bypass your conscious mind entirely. That morning when you wake up and the weight is simply gone. Not because anything changed in your external world, but because something fundamental shifted in the geometry of your inner space-time. These are not random events. These are emissions. Luminous expulsions from a white hole that has been building pressure behind the singularity of your healing, waiting for the moment when the throat opens wide enough to release what has been processed in the dark. You are not trying to be happy. You are overflowing. The distinction is critical. Trying is effort applied against resistance. Overflowing is what happens when the container can no longer hold what has been generated inside it. The white hole does not try to emit. It cannot stop emitting. It is the nature of its geometry. And when your own transformation reaches this phase, the joy, the clarity, the creative force, and the radical compassion that pour out of you are not achievements, they are physics. The inevitable result of pain that has been fully processed and is now being returned to the universe as energy. And here we arrive at the law that holds all of this together. The law that guarantees not a single moment of your suffering was in vain. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change form. This is the first law of thermodynamics, and it is absolute. It has no exceptions. It does not care whether the energy in question is the thermal output of a star or the emotional weight of a human being who spent 3 years unable to get out of bed. The energy is conserved. Every dark second, every sleepless hour, every moment you spent inside the event horizon, convinced that you were being erased, all of it was a deposit. A compression of raw, experiential energy into the densest possible form, stored in the singularity of your darkest chapter, accumulating interest at a rate that only the physics of total confrontation can generate. The white hole is the withdrawal, and the balance is extraordinary. What you are emitting now, the insight, the depth, the unshakable grounding of someone who has been to the bottom of the universe and returned, is not proportional to your pain. It exceeds it, because the singularity does not merely store energy, it transforms it. It upgrades the frequency. What went in as the low, heavy vibration of grief comes out as the high, clear tone of understanding. What went in as the chaotic static of anxiety comes out as the focused beam of purposeful action. The universe is paying you back, and the exchange rate between darkness and light, when processed through the singularity of genuine transformation, is not 1-to-1. It is exponential. Nothing in your life was wasted. Every dark second was a deposit into the bank of your eventual brilliance, and the account has matured. The fountain is flowing. You are radiating. The darkness has been redeemed, not erased. not denied, but alchemized through the most extreme physics the universe has to offer into a light that could not have existed without it. But there is one final state beyond the black and the white. A state where the whole and the light become one, where the consuming and the emitting reach perfect, simultaneous equilibrium. A state of absolute, eternal balance that the universe achieves only at its most sophisticated. In our final chapter, we reach the Kerr metric, the silent master. It is time to become the stillness that moves the universe. Everything in this universe rotates. The Earth spins on its axis at 1,000 miles per hour. The solar system orbits the galactic center at 500,000. Galaxies themselves pirouette in clusters that wheel through the cosmic void in choreographies so vast they take billions of years to complete a single turn. Rotation is not a feature of the universe. It is the signature, the fundamental gesture, the deepest expression of a cosmos that was born spinning and has never, not for a single instant in 14 billion years, stopped. And so it is with the most powerful black holes in existence. They spin. In 1963, the mathematician Roy Kerr solved a set of equations that Einstein himself believed might never be solved. He described a black hole that rotates, not a static, motionless point of collapse like the theoretical objects we explored in the earliest chapters of this journey. A living, dynamic, spinning structure whose rotation does something so extraordinary that it redefines the relationship between matter and the space it inhabits. A Kerr black hole does not simply curve space-time. It grabs it. It grips the very fabric of reality and drags it along in the direction of its spin, the way a hand dragged through still water pulls the surrounding liquid into a spiral that follows the motion of the fingers. This region, the zone where space-time itself is caught in the rotational pull of the black hole, is called the ergosphere. And inside the ergosphere, a remarkable thing becomes true. Nothing can remain still. Not matter, not light, not even empty space. The rotation of the central mass is so authoritative, so fundamentally woven into the geometry of the surrounding environment, that everything within the ergosphere is compelled to move in the direction of the spin. Stillness becomes physically impossible. The frame of reference itself is dragged. You could fire your engines at full thrust in the opposite direction, and you would still be carried forward by the current of rotating space-time. This is not force in the traditional sense. This is something deeper. This is the shape of reality being defined by the momentum of the center. Now bring this inward, one final time. You have traveled farther into your own darkness than most people will ever dare to go. You crossed the event horizon of a pain so massive it bent every thought toward its center. You were stretched and shredded in the tidal forces of honest self-examination, pulled into threads so fine that the false structures of your identity could no longer hold their shape. You reached the singularity, the 0 point, the dimensionless core, where time and story and ego collapsed into a silence so total it contained the sound of everything at once. You watched the black hole of your suffering evaporate, particle by particle, as the meaning you once assigned to your trauma was separated from the experience and returned to the void. You felt the gravitational governance of a darkness that had become your anchor, your center, the organizing principle around which a new and authentic life arranged itself. And you erupted from the white hole of transformation, radiating the processed light of everything you had survived. You have done all of this. And now, there is one final state, the state that contains all the others, the state that does not choose between darkness and light, between consumption and emission, between silence and sound, the state that holds them all in a single, spinning, perfectly balanced architecture of consciousness. You are becoming the Kerr equilibrium. This is not a black hole. This is not a white hole. This is the system that includes both. The rotating, dynamic, self-sustaining structure that consumes what must be consumed, emits what must be emitted, and does so in a continuous, unbroken cycle of transformation so seamless that from the outside it appears to be perfectly still. The master does not fear negativity. The master does not chase positivity. The master recognizes that both are orbital phenomena, experiences that arise in the surrounding space-time, move through their trajectories, and resolve according to the gravitational laws established by the center. The master is the center, the still point around which the dualities of human existence rotate without collision. This is the equilibrium that cannot be shaken, not because it is rigid, but because it is spinning. Angular momentum is the most stable force in physics. A spinning top resists being knocked over. A gyroscope maintains its orientation regardless of the forces applied to its frame. And a Kerr black hole, a consciousness with internal momentum, with earned rotational energy generated by the full journey through collapse and rebirth, drags the fabric of its surrounding reality into alignment with its own motion. You do not need to convince the world of your peace. You do not need to argue for your clarity. You do not need to announce your transformation or defend it against skeptics. Your presence does the work. The ergosphere of a centered mind extends outward in every direction, and everyone who enters it feels the pull. Not a violent pull, not a consuming gravity, a directional one, a current. The way a conversation changes when someone who has truly been to the singularity and returned walks into a room. The way tension reorganizes itself in the presence of someone who is no longer afraid of silence. The way chaos, almost reluctantly, begins to spiral into order around a person whose internal architecture is spinning with the momentum of genuine, hard-earned equilibrium. This is frame dragging, the physics of influence without effort, the geometry of a presence so rooted in its own center of gravity that the space-time around it has no choice but to conform. You are not imposing order, you are generating it. The way a massive spinning object generates the curvature of the space it inhabits simply by existing, simply by maintaining the angular momentum it has earned through the full cycle of its own becoming. And what is this presence made of? What is the substance of the person who has reached the Kerr equilibrium? Total awareness. Not the awareness of meditation retreats and breathing exercises, though those may have been tools along the way. This is the awareness that remains when every other structure has been tested, deconstructed, and reassembled in the singularity. This is the consciousness that watched its own ego get spaghettified and did not look away. The consciousness that sat in the zero-volume silence of its own compressed history and discovered that the observer cannot be destroyed because the observer was never a structure to begin with. The observer is the space in which structures arise and dissolve. The observer is the geometry itself, and geometry does not break. It bends, it curves, it spins, but it does not break. You are no longer a victim of cosmic accidents. You are no longer a passive recipient of the forces that move through your life. You are the architect of the vacuum, the one who determines Through the momentum and orientation of their own internal spin, what shape reality takes in their immediate vicinity. The silence you carry is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of everything, every fear you confronted, every identity you released, every dark chapter you allowed to evaporate, held in a rotational balance, so precise that it produces a stillness indistinguishable from power. Let us remember now what you have built. At the event horizon, you learned the boundary. You learned that there is a threshold beyond which old strategies stop working, where logic cannot outrun gravity, and where the only way forward is deeper. In the tidal forces of spaghettification, you learned the anatomy of your pain, that what appeared to be a monolith was always a collection of threads that could be separated, examined, and released. At the singularity, you learned the zero, the point beneath identity, beneath narrative, beneath time itself, where pure awareness sits in silence so dense it contains the echo of every possible future. Through Hawking radiation, you learned the evaporation that no structure of suffering is permanent, that the quantum mechanics of meaning and experience will dismantle even the most massive darkness, given the courage to stop feeding it with interpretation. In galactic governance, you learned the anchor that your darkness, properly positioned, is not a wound, but a center of gravity around which an entire life can organize itself into beauty. And in the white hole, you learned the return that everything consumed is re-emitted, that pain processed through the singularity becomes wisdom, and that the universe does not waste a single quantum of your experience. These were not chapters. These were not steps you completed and left behind. These are layers of your new identity, nested inside one another like the gravitational shells of a spinning black hole. The event horizon is still there. You still recognize the boundaries of what you can and cannot control. The tidal forces are still active. You still deconstruct the problems that arise, stretching them into manageable threads before they can reconsolidate into monoliths. The singularity is still accessible. You can return to the zero point of silence whenever the noise of the world requires a recalibration. The radiation still flows, old patterns still evaporate when you withdraw the dark meaning that sustains them. The governance still holds your center of gravity, still organizes the chaos, and the white hole still emits you, are still radiating the light of processed experience into every room you enter and every life you touch, all of it, simultaneously, spinning. This is the Kerr equilibrium, the state of the silent master who does not need to announce their power because their power is structural, woven into the geometry of their being, expressed not through words or actions, but through the curvature of the space-time they carry with them wherever they go. The journey is complete. You began this series staring at a black hole, terrified of the gravity that was pulling your life into an abyss you could not understand. You end it as the black hole, as the white hole, as the spinning, sovereign, self-sustaining system that contains the full spectrum of darkness and light in a single architecture of unshakable equilibrium. The universe is loud. It has always been loud. Stars explode, galaxies collide. The vacuum itself hums with the restless energy of particles flickering in and out of existence at the quantum edge of reality. The noise will never stop. It was never supposed to stop. But the master is silent. And in that silence, in that deep, spinning, gravitationally anchored stillness, that you have earned by descending into the center of your own collapsed star and emerging on the other side as pure, coherent light in that silence. You are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, watching itself in perfect stillness. At last,